options, having options. Because you have options, you can't make a decision. I am just realizing this. If your parents, and you ask them for money, they might or might not give you money, then you don't have a boundary. You don't have, okay, they won't give me money or they will give me money. If you don't have that, if you don't have the amount, then anything that you would need to solve that has monetary value, then you will have no idea how much work you need to put in because you don't know the amount of money that you need. And this is the same, you can say it's analogous to this scenario I'm about to talk about. There's two cats in this house. I live with my parents, but I want to move out really badly because I feel very uncomfortable in this house. I don't even talk to anyone. I talk on paper because of the not the same mindset. And let me continue with this example. You have this cat that is meowing for a person to open a doors for the cat to enter somewhere. But yeah, now I'm realizing this exactly relates. Connects is the same, psychologically the same. I have two brothers, right? And should I say brothers? There are two people in this house, and what happens? Cat meows, cat wants to go inside somewhere, you open the door. If every time the cat meows 10 times and someone opens the door and it always worked, guess what? That's something to optimize for because that worked. Maybe I'll meow harder, maybe I'll meow longer. And guess what's going to happen? They're going to keep on meowing until someone opens the door. Now, let's say that you never open the door and this cat has tried everything when it comes to meowing. Meowing for one whole day, or meowing for one whole week. It still had food given every day and water, but the door was never opened if the cat meows. Then what's going to happen? If the cat has this reason in their brain where I have to go in there, then what's going to happen is they're going to realize this is never going to work if I meow. Never going to work. And because it's never going to work, they will stop meowing and they will try something else. That could be jumping and trying to open the door. That could be maybe scratching someone. The only reason they wouldn't scratch someone is if they think there's a higher risk of not getting into that door or a risk for their own health, a higher constraint in the hierarchy. Right? That's the only reason they wouldn't scratch only because their brain perceived it as higher. And how does this relate to any action and what I'm thinking? Okay, let me tell you. I'm I could apply. I need money, right, for a laptop, and I need to this dental issue. And what I'm going to do for the dental issue, remove the implants, and then have my jaw expanded. And then, since the jaw is going to be expanded, then the teeth need to move. And even go over the site where there was the implant. The question is, what bone graft do you use to be able to safely move the teeth, right? And I would need to go to America to do this. And it's actually a very good thing because I want to get education in America as well. That's another thing I want to do. And you see how many things I have? Only three. And it's cost money. As example, school, I think it's about 20 to 60 grand. I think it's per year, which isn't a lot of money. But if you have no money, then you need to get the money. And if there's an option of, hey, my parents can give me the money if I ask them, then your brain won't know, hey, do I need to start a job right now? Do I need to build an actual skill to be able to get money and pay for this myself? Or do I keep doing what I was doing to be able to ask for money? That's the thing. How is your brain going to? It's that I've struggled with it. I never realized that this was an actual problem. But now I'm realizing that's the only problem. That's that's the only problem. If you have no options, you're going to do that action no matter what because your brain has no other options. It has the boundary. It knows exactly what it needs to do, or else nothing else would work. Now, what can you do? You can artificially say, hey, I'm never getting money from my parents. Guess what? You can do that. Even though your brain still has the option. If your brain didn't have the option, can't have money, then it's going to be very easy for you because you're going to know what you need to do. It's the boundary. The worst thing isn't having good or bad parents; it's having middle parents. That's the worst thing ever. How is that the worst thing ever? Because sometimes they can give you money, sometimes they don't. They don't have a particular reason why they want to or don't give you money. Right? They're confused brains. And they're confused brains because they don't understand psychology, they don't understand how the brain works. And that's how they're middle parents. That's probably most middle class people. And then, oh, options, I can't make decisions. You can't make decisions because you have options. That's the reason you can't make decisions. You have options, but you're not aware fully of the options. And you because you're not fully aware of the options, but you subconsciously know them, or you are aware of the options, but you're not aware that this is resulting in this behavior that your brain is having. Remember, you and your brain are one. You and your brain are one. What you experience, you're the brain, is the brain. If your brain is gone, you're gone forever. And that's the brain. It's chemicals, right? You're driven to do something because of what? Discomfort. And That discomfort leads to the decision you're going to make, the action. And if you have multiple options, then how can you calculate the value of any of those? How can you calculate to do anything because you don't know the end result? You have these options that you don't know their value, their worth. Because you don't know their value, their worth, then how are you going to do anything? If you have these options that you can do, but you haven't done them, because there's more uncertainty, there's more options, there's options on options that you haven't calculated, right? But if you, it's mostly external. These are options are mostly external from the environment, right? Example, your parents. That's a massive one. Your parents, who raised you since you were a kid and gave you food. Your parents. If your parents threw you out the house, and "Hey, I don't have nothing to eat, I have nothing to drink," guess what? You're probably going to go to every single store in your area. "Hey, give me a job. I need a job because I'm going to die. Give me a job. Give me a job." Go to bang on every house. "Hey, do you have food? I need food. I need what?" Would you ever do this in your current situation? No, because I don't need to. Exactly, you don't need to. But when you need to, you will do it. And when you're saying need, right, you see how it's very simplified need. Without knowing this information of the neuroscience and the psychology of the options, you're using the right words, need, but not understanding the that actionable insight. That's an actionable insight because now you know what you need to do. Burn your bridges. That's a heuristic way to say it. Burn your bridges to have a boundary. What are the things that are uncertain? If you're uncomfortable, maybe, hey, give your parents, "Hey, I want you, parent, I want you to give me a limit on money. I don't care if I'm dying and I need 100 grand. I don't care. I want you to set a limit for the amount of money you're going to give me." Guess what? They tell you, "Hey, I'll give you only 1,000 a month." They're only going to give you 1K a month. If you need more than that, you have to do something. What are you going to do? Beg? Right, that could be an option if that worked for your brain. And if your brain has that option, guess what? It's going to keep it in its head and is not going to let's say there's a job that you can get, or you have your business you're running online. Well, now because you have that option and you can beg, then what's lower cost? Begging for 30 minutes or having that business or going to work and then you have to drive there and then 30 minutes there, 30 minutes here. Right, that's already one drive and I'm only getting around 60 a day. And all I have to do is beg and get 1,000 in 30 minutes plus. Do you see how that works? Your brain is calculating all of this, but you're not consciously aware of it. You might be subtly aware of it, but you're not fully aware of it. And being fully aware of this is what creates change. Anyone who talks about action and motivation, this is it. This is it right here. Without this, there isn't without this. Any action you do, this is part of it. Options. It's always options. What options do you have? What is the lowest cost? Your brain is always going to want to do the lowest cost option because Why shouldn't it do the lowest cost option? But, major but, it's it's short term, it feels as the lowest cost option. But if you simulate the process long term, then that lowest cost option might actually be very high cost. And once you show that to your brain, then you will get your answer. Listen, all successful people, this is what they have. They don't have the option, and or they do have the option, but in their brain they made it that they don't have the option, and they calculate like this in their brain. Is the algorithm in their brain. That's how they calculate, and it drives action. They themselves cannot explain this because they probably never thought about it this deeply, or they probably can explain it, and they didn't explain it because not many people have the not many brains have the data to be able to understand what they're saying. And this is the reason you see successful people using heuristical words. For example, using the word smart, using the word okay, stupid. Not many successful people use it, and that's for a good reason. But there are actually, I don't recall anyone calling anyone stupid for successful. Only semi-successful people I've seen them using the word stupid. But smart, I've seen successful people using the word smart, and that's a heuristic. Example: successful person knows, personal psychology and neuroscience knows that it's data in the brain, and if you don't have the data and if you don't have the resources in your environment, there's no way you'll ever be successful. It's impossible. That's impossible. If you don't have, if you live on a farm, there's no technology, there's no internet. How are you going to build, example, a software company? There's no books, there's no one telling you that this exists. That's impossible. You're not, there's no electricity. You're not going to be able to have a software company. It's impossible. You're going to know nothing about computer science or any sort of electrical device, right? That's impossible. And that's the same exact thing with the modern world inside a city where everyone around you doesn't know data about any library, any books, no data on how it's helpful to know all this data, because all this data is how everything evolved. There's a there's a tool, and then this tool solves a particular problem, and there's this discovery, and then guess what? Another scientist learns about this, another person learns about this, has it in their brain. There's another discovery, has it in their brain. Now they can combine them, and then they have this new. Listen, every discovery, every anything, it was a combination of something. Right? If you go in the back of the chain of everything, how was everything evolved? And there's a reason evolved over multiple years. If listen, if right now, let's say any brains who are born, any person who is born is put on a stranded island with, let's say, resources and material from the 1200s, the 1700s. That's going to be exactly like the 1700s. It's not going to be like today. How? Because there is no technology, there is no resources, there is no data for for this modern world. The only reason you're able to compare yourself to the olden times and say, how didn't they know this, or X, Y, and Z? Well, it's simply because they didn't have the books, they didn't have the resources, they never learned about this because it didn't exist at the time. You could have built it, but without the knowledge, no one knew that this particular element, an element can do this reaction, and you can build this, and that. And there are also advancements that include your biology, and your biology is a process that you would have to wait, you could say time, the process to be able to see results. Example, if you use if you're testing with implants and something to do with dental, anything with the body, to see those results, your body has to heal. Right, that's a result in itself, seeing the healing process and then the end result, and then maybe you need another surgery after that. And then that's another 6 months. And you see how they accumulate, and then you see you need 1,000 people for this. Right? Maybe you tested on one person, now you need to test on 1,000 to make sure. And that's maybe you spent 5 years to be able to get this. I remember how a computer was built. I'm not sure of all the components, but it's multiple components, and there had to be manufacturers to be able to build the components and have them at an accelerated rate. And at first, probably computers were built single, right? They were built on their own without the company or anything. But not even, that's too far ahead. We have to go back. Probably there's the chips, and you need to discover electricity before even having a PC. Electricity, and then you probably have to discover the chips, and then you have to discover that it can connect. Probably multiple things that you have to discover before to be able to build a PC. That is very important to know, because that is for thing, every single thing you do. It's a combination of data and the creation, the evolution of that data to be able to assemble something. And therefore, any situation you're in and you don't have any data on, you can say, the reason I'm confused is because I don't have any data on this, I don't have any knowledge on this. Therefore, I cannot create something new if I don't have any knowledge of what could make the solution. Was this solution that I want what already exists? That's what you need to know. And also, I think it's very helpful to know this is coming from my brain, from talking from this. It's about components, building. Example, to build a PC, the components. Do you see how many components and probably many evolutions? If you can break down the PC, then you can probably see many timelines. Example, 18 something, 1950 something, 1970 something. And you can see, okay, those were timelines, how the PC was built from different multiple landmarks, right? Probably different countries as well, to be able to have the PC. Maybe not different countries, depends on the communication, how they would be able to communicate the PC. But there were the components already. They were built from physics, knowing different elements that were able to build that. Therefore, you're asking to yourself, if you want to build something, solution for something, then you must know how those components were built to then be able to assemble. You understand? You have to go a step back before the components. Knowing everything. And if you know the history of this, I think that's very helpful, because remember, to replicate the system, How are you going to replicate the system? How are you going to know how much you're doing is enough and how it's not enough? If you're doing something, a process to be able to build something, a solution, and every you read history and every person who built something has done this one particular thing, but you're not doing this one particular thing. Don't you think it's a good idea to test this one particular thing that they're doing? Right? If you're doing your things and you fail multiple times and you, it doesn't seem like you're making progress, isn't it a good idea to do that one thing that all successful creations had? You do that one thing they had, the process that they've done. I think that's very important to have history, and I think it's very important not only to have history, but know it in your brain memory. The reason you need to know this is because every time you're building something, your brain can recall, hey, this person did this, hey, these multiple people did this. Guess what? Multiple people were in this situation, therefore, I need to communicate with other people and connect with other people to be able to create the solution. It's very important to know this. If every creation there was, now you realize there's multiple components and you need to connect with multiple people, then you're planning ahead. You're not planning ahead, oh, I'm going to do this solo and I'm going to rule the world and live forever. No, I'm going to have multiple people beside me with different professions, experts in their field, and I'm going to be able to build a solution with them. Do you see how you're planning differently? And because you're planning differently, now you're doing your daily actions. They're going to be taught differently, calculated differently, because the objective is different. This is very important. This is something that you action, right? You need to, because people say action, take action. You know this now, take action. No, you don't know this. You only heard me. This is 27 minutes right now, and you only heard this once, and you've been watching a video. You don't. If I tell you, hey, recall what I just said, tell me everything I just said, and how does it align with with your situation, and what you're going to do in the future, and give me 10 examples. Can you do that? No, you can't. You cannot do that. Therefore, you cannot take action if you can't recall anything I just said. And this is a very misconception as well. Remember, people on YouTube aren't. I don't. I don't want to have it as I'm saying people on YouTube are X. What I'm saying is they're not understanding the really how the brain works. You watching right now, to be able to take action on anything, your brain must know it. There are misconceptions about school and everything. School is very important. School gives you an objective to work on and it shows progress. You need to know the progress. Or else, as we said before, how is your brain going to create a boundary? You need a boundary to able to make a decision. If you don't have a boundary, then how is your brain going to make a decision? Because it has these multiple options, but you can't even name these options. Therefore, it cannot decide. If there is something that you don't know of, but you're saying it exists, and actually, I think I'm saying it inaccurately. But if you have options and you don't know their value, I think that's better. You have options, but you don't know their value and how to utilize them, then how can you decide between any of those options? If they all look the same, if their value is all the same for your brain, then how would you know which option to take? And I probably listen. I'm not talking from a script. I'm talking from my brain, and I'm probably making mistakes talking like this. But I'm doing this for myself as well. I wanted to upload videos to be able to show my journey of improving myself and connected with people with similar experiences and people who have the same objectives and people who could help me with my objectives, right? People who have knowledge for my objectives by people with a similar experience. Right? Even that I need to write down and make it crystal clear. That's supposed to be. It's supposed to be very straightforward and clear to say from your brain because having the objective very clear is very important. Now the options, the decision, and I was talking about YouTubers and how sometimes they don't provide you with with knowledge. They say action and they say action from what they just said, and now they say you don't have a choice or something like that. Let me stop on that. You, for any action, it could be this text that I've said. If no, it's very unstructured, then your brain doesn't have any. Some of you might can assign value to what I just said and be able to make a decision on this because it already connects with experiences from your brain and right, it connects because your brain can relate to it. If your brain can't relate to it, then how are you going to understand and know what to do with what I'm saying? You can't. It's unstructured video. It's a video. It's not text. It's very. What's easier, having text or a video? How are you going to recall the information that I said from your brain? But if you have text, you can go back to the text and have the information recalled, right? That's how text is more efficient to recall something. A video might be easier for you for your brain to open for the situation, for this, what I'm saying, because it's easier to consume that format, a video, because you're not really reading, you're listening. Very different. Listening, you're using your ears. Reading, you're using your eyes and you're using your prefrontal cortex. And it's different, right? Music, you listen, your brain is already wired to just listen, and you're listening to me right now. Right? You can close your eyes. You're already saving more energy closing your eyes. And you're not seeing anything. Remember, what takes the most data from your brain? Probably or your eyes, because there are so many different elements. Remember, your brain is an engine. Your brain is an engine. You have to think about it's biological because it is biological. There is no magic, it's biological. When you open your eyes, there's a lot of data. A lot more data than if you're just hearing, at least. That's what I hypothesize. And I think that's how your video, you're listening, and now having this in text structured format, because this isn't structured. If you go transcribe this, there's a lot of pauses and there aren't any chapters and there aren't any exercises to tell you, hey, you progressed in this. There aren't any example use cases of what I just said. Remember, your brain can only calculate indifference. What I mean by that is, if your brain doesn't know a difference between something, then it won't be able to make a decision. It won't be able to make a decision unless you randomly choose. But you won't be able to interpret that information and encode it inside your brain if there's no difference. You'd only have one thing. And a good example of this, let's say, okay, I need to be quick for this video is 36 minutes. Let's say you, let's say, let's say you're a baby and let's say you're a, okay, let's say you were born and you have no sensory inputs, right? You can't touch anything, you can't feel anything, you can't see anything, you can't smell anything, you can't even know that your heart is beating, anything. You don't even know if you're on the ground because you can't feel the ground. Maybe you are on the ground, maybe you are swinging your hands. You don't know your eyes are blinking because you can't feel it. Okay, but now let's imagine you can see. Okay, so you have one sensory input, you can't see, but you can't feel anything. Therefore, you don't know if you're blinking, you don't know if your eyes are closed, you can't tell. Okay, and I'm telling you, you can't tell because, let's say, you were in a black room. A black room, that's it, there's no light. You can't see any objects, you can't feel any objects again, you can't bump into any objects, you wouldn't feel any pain. And everything is black. Right? You could slam your head against the wall until you die, but you're still not feeling anything. You can't even feel. You don't even know if you walk through a wall. You don't even know if you are in a wall, not in a wall, because you can't feel anything. Okay. If that if that is all true, and you can only see, right, eyes open, you can only see, and if you can only see, eyes open, but as we said, you can't tell the difference. All you're seeing is everything black. That's all you're seeing, everything black. Then, what do you think the brain is thinking about? If everything is black and that's it, that's the only. Can you even call that an input? If that's the only thing, this, let's say you, because we're talking an example, if you only seen was black, that's the only input you've seen. You don't even have an input of your own heartbeat or your own body. You can't even see your own body because everything is black. You can't even feel anything or know you're breathing. Then how are you going to know anything exists? Your brain is going to be, there's going to be nothing in your brain. You can't even tell that there is something, because how can't you tell there is something? Because all you've ever seen was black, was one thing. There, you never seen, example, any other color, example white. You've never seen any other shape. All you've seen is black, but you can't even tell that you're seeing. You can't even tell that you're alive. For you to be able to know that you're alive, there must be something that tells you that you're alive. And we're assuming that this person, you're not eating. You can't know if you're eating if you're not feeling anything. You don't know if you're drinking, not or excreting anything from your body. Therefore, you don't know that you're alive. You don't know. Nothing exists to you. The color black doesn't exist to you. The only reason you can say that's black is because there's another color. You can only tell that that's black because there's another color, right? And then where's the boundary? How many inputs do you need for your brain to be able to know, to be able to interpret something? But first, let's take that principle. For your brain to be able to interpret something, let me say interpret equals data point inside your brain, and then making, I think you call that a decision, making a decision on it or calculating its value, interpreting it. To be able to do that, it must be different from the data points inside your brain. If that data point, when it goes in your brain, isn't different from something else, then it will not be able to assign any value or realize it exists because it's the same. It's not interpreting it. And that's very important to know, because in a situation you're in, example, if you're studying, let's say you're studying, in any situation, this is very important. Say you're studying, and when you're studying, say you're studying different topics, or topics, you're studying, let's say, 4 things, and let's say these 4 things, okay, they're not the same, because you're able to identify they're 4 things, or 4 different things. They're not the same, but the actual difference from these things, and let's say this is very important to know, it's actually not clear. It's not clear how they're different. You can't really tell how they're clearly different. And in your brain, you might think, well, how can my brain just, yeah, should I use the word? I don't want to use that word. I was going to say the word. Maybe I'll just use it to make this example. Because this is real. This is how people actually feel every day. A lot of people, hey, I'm stupid. Right? They say, hey, I'm stupid. I'm not good for any of this. I don't think I should have ever mentioned that. I think that's poison, even knowing that, but people actually think like that. And it's because of many things that I can talk of for many hours, but I will another video on that. And anyway, they think like that, how I just said, and I don't think I will ever say that ever in my life, but they think like that. And the fact is, biologically, it's biological. There is no your brain doesn't see a difference between them. The only reason your brain doesn't see the difference between them is because your brain doesn't have the data inside, okay? And what you can do in that scenario, start to have difference. Okay, I have these 4 things. Right now, these 4 things, I don't see that much difference with them. They look the same. Okay, what can I do? I have these multiple ways that you can do. Number one is their word. What's their term? What's the term's name? Example, this term has a certain name. This term has a certain name. Let's say this term, I don't know. Let's create something. This term is zoo, and this term is switch. Okay, let's use that example. And what you can do to create difference is etymology. And the etymology is to know where these words came from, right? Their history and how their use case of the word evolved. And this is very important to know. You search that up, and guess what? Now you're realizing, oh, this word came from this evolution, this creation for people to talk something about this. And it was used first in Latin, and it's evolved from this century. Do you see the difference? How it's already coming for this particular term? This century, from this group of people, let's say, I think Latin was a language which was common in many countries, but let's say a certain country and certain language from a different period of time for a different set of action. Do you see how we're already getting four different things only for checking the etymology for this word? And let's take the other word, the switch, has a different example from where it evolved at a certain action. Let's say it was a different country as well. Let's say it had different words before this and different meanings. Boom, that's already, you added, let's say, four differences from knowing the etymology. Now you only had half a difference to know about this word. Now you have 4.5 differences. And you can go further than that. You can have images. I remember you're reading on paper, and if you have the image, then that will help. Not only that, break it down. Okay, this is, let's say, is a certain component. What is it made up of? What is this object made up of? What are its constitutes? What are its components? What is it made up of? And now you're going to see a lot of difference from between them. You added multiple examples from that. You already have probably 10 plus by now. Guess what you can do, which probably is one of the most powerful? Assign them. Assign their value. Create a use case for them. Okay, because now that you can see a difference, now your brain can start to give examples now of how they fit with your brain and the objectives you have, because not every brain has the same objective, because you might be in a certain environment that tells you what objectives you must have based on the environment you had and the data in your brain. The only way is right, and that's how your objective came, because you're in a certain environment, you got certain data, and then you have a certain objective, and that's how your objective is different from someone else, because they had different data in their brain. Okay, this is very simple. Very simple. It's very simple. It's very simple because I've repeated these stuff I've repeated this stuff and read about these. I read about these. I read about neuroscience and data, and the data in your brain. It's only data from your brain, and repeating these examples. But it's not going to be simple for someone who's seeing this for the first time, because me saying these, it's already an example in my brain. It's already in memory. If it's not in your memory, then it's not going to be simple, because your brain can't recall any examples. When I recall this information, I have different set of examples, like the ones I have just given you. And for you, right, you need to be able to get this into memory. I transcribed this video and that part, and write this down, an example in the difference. Hey, I cannot understand something, and you do those steps that I gave you, and then you see the components, and then you have the future state. I think I mentioned this, or I didn't. How do they fit with my actions that I do, my objectives? How can I utilize these? And I think that's the one which gives value to to the the data points, to these differences, these four things. It assigns value. Okay, which is the one that's most important now? That I know this information, the difference between them. Now, which one is most important and which one aligns with what I'm doing? And in the beginning, when you're doing this, you can, right, because there are different things. You could have the subject, let's say neuroscience, and you're learning about four different terms. And these terms, there could be just learning terms, right? You're learning structure biologically of the brain. And you don't know the difference, and now you're learning where the difference came from. And now you're assigning their their role of how they're going to fit in with what you're doing. And there's difference because you could do this with terms in neuroscience. There are some terms, concepts, that terms or concepts. The only reason I'm saying terms or concepts is because I myself don't understand the word concept clearly. But I need to pause. I need to go to the bathroom. Okay, I'm back, and I was talking about the terms. There are different terms, and from my own experience, right? When I say my own experience, the actions that I've done, and particularly in the online doing research, for this, for my jaw, the implant, and right, and what else? And making money online. What I was doing is e-commerce, dropshipping, and doing research, and it involves much more than that. You have to set up different tools together, and I could talk on that as well a lot. I could talk a lot on that. And do you see this thing? My brain doesn't think about this, but my brain, when it says a certain point, look, I had talked about the Shopify. I didn't even mention Shopify, but that's what connect dropshipping and e-commerce. But then it opened another part of my brain. I wasn't even thinking about that at all. But now, because I was talking about how I went there, and then my brain was recalling, okay, what are different examples you do on your PC? That is one of them. And then, boom, now it opened and multiple other neural pathways. That's what you have in your brain, neural pathways about the subject data. And that's another principle as well. I mean, terms and difference of terms, and now principle of the recalling. Let me talk about this recalling principle briefly. It's about recalling. You could have your brain can see an object and recall the data because it sees the object, and be able to form ideas when it sees the object. Therefore, what I mean by this is you don't have to memorize everything. Or, yeah, You see, when I say the words, you don't have to memorize everything. That is, delete that. I never said that, because that actually creates more confusion than anything. Because I just said that you need to memorize a set of things, the foundation, to be able to make a decision. And now I'm saying you don't have to memorize everything. That is going to create confusion. Even though I need to explain it clearly. If I can't explain it clearly, then I don't understand it myself. And that's factual. And memorizing. You need to memorize the. I'm thinking about, should I talk about the concept first, the mental model, and then talk about what you need to memorize? Okay, let's talk about the mental model quickly. Central nodes. A node. What is a node? This video is going to be about 5 hours long. What is a central node? A central node equals, say, data. You have data, and imagine it like, say, a central node, a neuron. Data stored in your neurons. Just imagine, just know that's a neuron, and you can imagine it as a circle to compress data in your brain to make it easier for you to visualize. That's how I do it, anyway. Just a circle, an oval, or anything you want. Anyways, I had to stop saying anyways. The central node. What is a central node? You have nodes, and I think you would call this a graph, but how I'm imagining it in my brain is a web. Different circles, datas, different types of data, and entities, different entities with relationships, and the relationships is the line connecting them. That's the relationship. You can call it the edge. Entities and relationships, and really, you're trying to find the one that has the most connections in anything in your life. Example, let me. What example can I give? One example that I used before when I learned about this was when I was trying to learn about PayPal and Stripe and Visa and MasterCard. I think those are. I was learning about those, and I was doing that because I had my money held in PayPal, because I was when I was doing the dropshipping that I mentioned. I'm still doing it, but I paused because I'm working on gaining knowledge on my implant job, because I realized, hey, my brain is deviating focus every couple of minutes, and it's because I have a problem, discomfort with this implant. My tooth isn't going forward, it's not going forward because there's this implant, the jaw can't go forward, and the mandible is held back. It's uncomfortable. Now, and the money got held because it was a new PayPal account. It was my first time making the money on PayPal. and I was selling hearing aids to the German market. That's the reason I had PayPal, because it's an EU market. And it was about, it wasn't a lot, it was only 700. Actually, no, it was 516. The 700 was another purchase that was later on, after PayPal had already unfrozen everything, and that was on Stripe, the other one, not actually PayPal. That was about a month apart. Should I have? I'm just going to talk about everything. And even though it's unstructured, maybe I'll create a Google document and make it structured. Actually, I will do that. We continue. And what happened? That's 13. What happened is frozen, and I needed to learn about, okay, how is it frozen? What's going on? I didn't know at that time that it's actually their protocol, right? You have a new account, it's always frozen for 21 days, and got released after 21 days. And what happened is I wanted to learn, and I was doing, I think it was issuers, credit, is it credit issuers, bank issuers, something along those terms. Right now I'm visualizing the diagram, the visual of these connected. What I had, there was this post on Twitter that I found to be able to explain this clearly. I think it's credit card issuers. And and send, and which we're talking about the centrality bias, the central nodes. And in this example, PayPal and Stripe, they're not connected to each other directly, right? So you have these two nodes, PayPal and Stripe, they're not connected directly. And we know there's Visa and MasterCard and Amex, but let's have Visa and MasterCard on top. And guess what? PayPal and Stripe are both connected to Visa and MasterCard. PayPal and Stripe have to follow Visa and MasterCard's policies, right? And then Visa and MasterCard have to follow other policies. And what I'm saying is, in that situation, if you want to learn about Visa and MasterCard and how you as a company, PayPal or Stripe, have to follow certain rules for having Visa and MasterCard, right? Then it would be more useful to learn about Visa and MasterCard, that section where they have the rules of the companies to have certain checklists, than to learn about all the policies of what Stripe does and PayPal does. That it's more efficient to do the central node, the Visa MasterCard. And you see me pausing a lot because my brain doesn't have a lot of data about the subject and hasn't went deeply into it to have the exact example and find that central node data. Because You can say at the central node is Visa and MasterCard, but if you don't show the actual example, then have you actually tested it to see if it works? You didn't actually test it, right? But you tested it in some other places. You tested it in some other places. You give examples. If you can't give examples, then you don't really understand it yourself. Central nodes. But central nodes is the one that connects the most connections, and knowing that unlocks those two instead of thinking about that only one thing, right? And it depends for your objectives as well. And going back to this, I was talking about the different terms about the neuroscience, different terms, and different learning, and different things you can learn, and how this video is very unstructured, how some of them are more important than the others based on your objectives. Based on your objectives, you might have something that requires this one piece of knowledge, one piece of data point from the neuroscience, in the small term you can say, the one that has the least connections, and you might actually need that to perform an action, let's say something in surgery. This might be totally, maybe you need that, and that's going to be, actually that's going to maybe have the highest relationships for your current situation, because now that relates to your surgery. That's the missing data point that you need. Now it connects to your surgery, and not only does it connect to your surgery, then the surgery, when it's done, it connects to other different things that it unlocks. And so it depends on the situation. It always depends on your objective. I can't tell you binary. I can't tell you the central node for something, for some brain is going to be the same central node for another brain, unless we talk about something that's manufactured. Example, the Stripe, Visa, and MasterCard. That's a manufactured system, right? Therefore, it might apply to that. And a good example is, I had this example of a periodontist which does the gums and removes the implants and everything, versus someone who's going to widen your jaw and have your jaw put forward. I was thinking about who would be the best person to go to know what to do in my situation, because I have an implant and you need to remove the implant to do the expansion, and mine is badly angled as well. Therefore, I am going to remove it 100%. And which person do you go to, right? And you think about this. You have the periodontist, you remove the implant first, and then you need to expand. If you need to remove the implant first and then expand, then what I did, I went to the periodontist first. I didn't actually, I'm explaining how it would happen. You would go to the periodontist first, and then after you went to the periodontist, what does the periodontist do? Hey, give me your treatments. What have you done before X, Y, and Z? What do you have? What are your problems, discomfort, symptoms? And then remove, and then go someone to do the expansion and draw forward, unless they're part of the same team. Do you see that? For me to unlock this jaw expansion and jaw forward, I would need to already have went to the periodontist. But if I went to the periodontist, it doesn't mean I went to widen my jaw already. In this scenario is in this scenario when I went to the periodontist, you you do not you would have not went to widen your jaw because the implant has to be removed before widening the jaw. Therefore, when you go to the periodontist, you only went to the periodontist. When you go to the jaw widening, you went to the periodontist and you're at the jaw widening. And when you say you went to the periodontist, you can assume you removed your implant as well. Actually, that doesn't matter. And periodontist, you went to the periodontist? There's two, periodontist and jaw widening. Go to periodontist, requirements 0. Go to the jaw widening, requirements, periodontist. You see this? Therefore, if you go to the periodontist might not know anything about jaw widening because remember, he's going to ask you for your past treatments and might also for future treatments, but he's doing a process before that treatment. Whereas when you go to the jaw widening, hey, past treatments, what have you done? Hey, I went to the periodontist and I had an implant removed and I had this bone graft. Boom, and now you can imagine that it probably makes more sense to go to a jaw widening person because he probably had experience where there's people who went to periodontists and had implants before coming to him, coming to the jaw widener. Whereas periodontist, you could go to remove an implant, but it doesn't always mean that you want to get your jaw widened. And in your objective, in your equation, the jaw widening is the last step. The jaw widening is the last step with the face pull forward, but that would be the same provider. Therefore, the jaw widening is the last step. Right? The jaw widener person is the last step. With the face forward, that's the same thing. Again, the jaw plus face forward, that's the last step. And that's the last step. And the periodontist is a step before that. A step before that. Therefore, in your equation, that's a hierarchy. Okay, that's a hierarchy. Jaw widening is on top of the periodontist. The periodontist is the jaw widener plus face pull forward. This is the periodontist. This is the hierarchy. Everything propagates to the hierarchy. Propagates. Periodontist, hey, information. I went, me, customer, maybe customer, right? That's customer. Me, customer, had solution with periodontist, information. Now I went to the jaw. Remember, everything propagates to the hierarchy when it relates. And guess what? Now this one person on top of the chain, the jaw widener, knows what I've done with the periodontist. But with the periodontist, it's not a requirement to widen my jaw. Therefore, this periodontist might or might not know about the jaw widening. But this person always would know about the implant and what I did at the periodontist because it's a requirement knowledge for widening the jaw. This is how that works. Therefore, if you want the knowledge, you have to think about, okay, what is the last step you're going to take? Right, or not the exact last step, but and I'm not saying not the exact last step because I'm also thinking about having a biological tooth inserted there, but I don't have there isn't a solution which is readily available to place something like a biological tooth or something with a periodontal ligament which mimics a tooth. There isn't a solution for that, and there hasn't people who have done that. But if there were people who have done that, then that might be the best for the hierarchy because it's higher up. But there's a distinction because a tooth, you replacing a tooth doesn't mean that you got your jaw widened. That's very important. Getting your tooth replaced, let's say this tooth that came out, you to regenerate your tooth, which there are already regeneration of teeth in progress and testing, but not publicly available yet. To get the regeneration doesn't mean you had to widen your jaw beforehand. Therefore, when you go on this hierarchy, is it really a hierarchy? It's a hierarchy in your plan of what you're about to do, but it doesn't mean it's a hierarchy where it will be a prerequisite. Right? Because to get a replacement of the tooth, it doesn't mean you had to have your jaw widened or planning to get the jaw widened. But when you get your jaw widened, they're going to have a CBCT scan, cone beam. I forgot the last part. Cone beam, CT, cone beam something. And when you widen your jaw, they're going to need to know that information. Even though when you regenerate your teeth, they would need to know if you widen your jaw. And when you go to the widening your jaw, then you're not going to have patients telling, hey, I want to regenerate my teeth, therefore they might not have planned widening the jaw for regeneration of teeth, therefore regeneration of teeth, going to that first maybe might actually be the best solution because there might be a person who did the full process. Let's remember, if you widen your jaw without the variable of how I'm going to regenerate my teeth, it might be a different process from someone else who had the regeneration of the teeth as a variable. Therefore, the isomorphic principle and isomorphic, we talk about what can be applied to other situations, is you probably go to the end of the chain of your, let's say, treatment. And when we say treatment, we're not talking only about dental or any biological treatments you want to do, but also anything else. Example, let's use the example of school. If you want to get some information or you want to share information, who would you rather share it to, an average student or the teacher? Or if you haven't asked a question, who do you ask? If you not ask question, but let's say you want to inquire some information, right? It's it depends on what information you need and what relation it is. I had an example. That's the reason I can recall about the teacher example, because I had an example where it showed that the teacher is more efficient. And let me explain the structure. I think the structure, when you say the structure, you can say the topology. And the topology is simple. Guess who every student is connected to? Guess who every student is connected to? The teacher. 50 students will have to, hey, it's my assignment, sir. Hey, the sir has to know all the names that came in. Attendance. Questions. Anything urgent from the student that needs to be told to the teacher knows. Teacher had also multiple years. Right, look at it like this. Every year you might have 100 students. Or let's keep it simple. Every year has 50 students. Versus you, the one student, when you go in that class, you only see, hey, that's that one teacher. That's that one teacher, but the teacher has 50 students, 50 different brains. You understand how much more data access, filtering data. I said filtering because if one of the students has a constraint, he would tell the. Actually, I need to go a few steps back. Even. And it depends on the scenario. Be able to show that. Let's say foreign students, and you have questions about that. Teacher or the actual student who was a foreigner? Or, like example, this is different as well. Everyone, the noise, right? Information, entropy, the information when it moves from the source, then there's noise. There's two different scenarios. This is two different scenarios. I should probably write this down. This foreign student example. Okay. This is a perfect example. If we have the foreign student, okay, and let's say you want to know the experience of a foreign student. Yes, exactly, it's the perfect example. You want to know information about foreign student example and their experience and everything, but you don't know any foreign students. Then what do? Do you go to every student and ask them, hey, were you a foreign student? X, Y, and Z? No. What do you do? Okay, this is what you do. This is what you do. You go to a teacher. Guess what? The teacher is having, let's say, he has 6 different classes a year with 50 different students. That's 300 different students every year. And he's been teaching for 10 years. That's maybe 3,000 different students. The best thing to do is you go to that teacher and ask him, hey, do you know any foreign students? Do you know any foreign students that you know of past these years? Because I'm going to the same XYZ. You know any foreign students? Oh, yes, I do know any foreign students. I know these 12 people. Boom, now you have access to 12 people. But now this is the next step. Now the next step is the information from the students. You don't ask the sir, okay, tell me, you don't ask him and tell him, okay, what did they tell you about their experience and what hurdles did they have and what they were able to solve, hurdles, what problems did they have and what problems did they manage, how did they solve them, and XYZ. You can do that because that is very low cost. You can ask the teacher, hey, what did the problems did any of the students go through, because and you always align this with your own problem. I have this problem, X, Y, and Z. You can always do that as a first test because that's lowest cost, and it could have a high return of investment if it can answer your question. But if you want the least noise answer and the most in-depth answer, you don't get it from the teacher. You only get the direction from the teacher of the options you have 12 different options. And then you go to the student, right? Then you go to the student, and then the student, you can ask him, you'll have the data with the least amount of noise because it's coming from the source. And now you can have these experiences. And guess what? They're foreign students, and you have this foreign student thing. Now they can probably even share more experiences that go beyond your question, your objective, but they go beyond your question, and it could even give you information that you would only have found out after you made the mistakes. That's very important. Do you see how this is not binary? It's not a yes or no. It's a process that is conditional. It's conditional. It's a conditional process that depends on things. Right? It depends on other things. And that's a very good example. You could probably write this down and have it on Google Docs and have, okay, this is one example. You can transcribe this, give it to AI and make this clearer, and have it in a Google document of information propagation or the most efficient decisions. You come up with a term that makes the most sense. AI could come up with a good term because he has data from neuroscience, psychology, and he can combine those. And there's probably literature that covers this already. Example, game theory, economics. I think that's probably really common in game theory. And you could have this sheet and you have this example, and every time you want to make a decision, you could go through these examples that you have in a sheet of paper. Let's say you have 100 different examples. You're going to tell me now you can't make a decision. That's impossible because now you know how to make a decision. You know, one is biological. You know, two, the most efficient thing to do. Three, you have 100 different examples and you can probably relate to any scenario. And it's the highest return. It's one of the highest return of investments you can do because this is a process. And now you can apply this to multiple different things, other things. We need to do this, hey, do this in Google Docs, and then I have 100. I can do 100 differences. We talked about this. The difference is very important. And now you have a database where you can, and it's assigned to something. It's a decision. Whenever you want to make a decision and it's important, let's say you go through this, or let's say your brain is feeling confused, and then you go through this, and guess what? You do this multiple. You do this. You start doing this. Then after a while, it becomes part of you. It becomes part of you that you may only need to visit this once a year. Until then, you don't even need to visit this anymore because it's a part of you. And these examples, they're obvious to you now. It's a heuristic now. But it's always good to keep them as record and do not delete them. Because number one, you could always go back to them if you need a refresh of memory. Number two, you could share this information, and sharing it is very important because when you share this information, you're helping other people, and when you're helping other people, you're helping yourself. Because giving them this information. Now they can understand this information, and when you talk about, when you talk with this person, guess what? Now they know this information, and now you can talk on other things. And this is the same concept with the message. Right, message. Even building rapport with someone. For example, let's say you message someone on Instagram or something, or even send them a letter or something like that to someone you say admire, someone which aligns with your objectives, someone that you think knowing their knowledge or learning from them is important for your current objective, the destination you want to have. Right, you can send them this message, and when you see them in person, you tell them, hey, I sent you a message, and hey, have you seen this message that I sent you? And you could even start talking about this message that, and yeah, have, you can start building the rapport, right? You have a relation because you send them a message. That's a relation in their brain. To get someone's attention and then keep their interest, you need something that relates with them, right? Having that message, that's already, yeah, you're building that rapport, and you'll be able to get that objective that you wanted and build a relationship and even get more than what you anticipated. But don't think about these rand. Don't think about, yeah, maybe I get more than anticipated. No, you think about this because you don't want to do that, because you don't want to train your brain in that algorithm. You need to train your brain, have an objective, and messaging this person aligns with my objective because of X, Y, and Z. Okay, it's very important to do that. It's very important to do that. Do that because you want to make sure you program your brain well. Program your brain well. Another good example of this as well is, let's say you're going somewhere and it's a certain job. Let's say an engineer for your car or something like that. And you can learn. Okay, what does an engineer learn? What was his education? What's an engineer's education? And let's say based on country, based on school, you can go learn for that for 1 hour. Guess what? You just learned only for 1 hour, but the amount of return of investment that could have is much higher, right? Because you can start to ask him, hey, what school did you go to? What education did they have? I heard about this, that you went to the school and you learn this subject for X amount of years. And now you have something to talk about. And now, well, guess what? You might give more information than you asked for, number one. And number two, that's a template. That's a template you can use on any engineer. You can go to another engineer. And remember, an engineer can decide to work for you or not. And remember, you as a business owner must have a connection with your employees, right? You must have you must have a let's say connection. You have that report the employees are working for you. It's a template. Say you have the engineers, and now you can even ask them these questions. Build this report. Know more who they are. Guys, remember when you're talking to anyone, they're a brain. They have multiple connections, and you filter out their connections. They give you a set of connections. Hey, I know this, this, and that. Okay, my objectives. How can this align with my objectives? Example, with my tooth and everything. If there's someone that I'm connecting with, and talk about connections, and talking about, hey, had this someone who regenerated their teeth and expanded their jaw and feet. That's going to grab my attention and interest real quick, and I'm going to probe on. I'm going to keep asking questions on that until I have the contact number of the person she's talking about, or he's talking about, the exact contact number that they're talking about, and that's it. Right, I'm going to get that contact number, and you already know I got everything easy made for me. Someone already done it. I can go ask them as many questions as I want. I have the solution just like that. And that's very important to know because remember, guys, the computer, search engines, you're inquiring information, right? What's usually related with the keyword search you're doing. And for something to be on the internet, first it has to be posted. Second, there's the search engine of the search engine optimization of which are most relevant and on top of the hierarchy, but it has to be on the internet. And when something is on the internet, it's always delayed. That's very important to know. When something is on the internet, it's always a delayed process. It's always faster in person to know the information because that's a prerequisite for the posting on the internet. Right? You know many stuff in your brain, but you haven't uploaded everything to the internet, right? And you might have important stuff in your brain, and you haven't uploaded it on the internet. I have important stuff on the brain in my brain that I haven't uploaded on the internet. Right? Example, information that I'm saying here in this video, what the principle is. Hey, I'm talking about them in this video, but did I upload them on a website? No. Would this even come up? I don't even have my title and the video to represent what I'm saying. But if I was in person communicating with someone, then if it relates, it could lead. Do you see what I said? If it relates, it could lead to me speaking about this. If it relates, that's very important when you say it relates because you're creating a boundary. Do you see how I'm increasing the perceived value of communicating with a person? And how this is in itself is making your brain, how it makes more sense. Communicating with people is actually makes a lot of sense. There's actual value in that. It makes sense. There's there's many different examples of how it's very important to communicate with someone. Just from me saying this stuff. And that's a stages your brain goes through. It starts to relate with what I'm saying, and now it's building these data points. Try creating these anticipations. And this leads me to another point. How many points am I going to have? This leads me to another point of your brain your brain anticipating, right? Having this, you're anticipating, might might have actions planned or even thought about the actions. And it's a problem I've had from my own experience as well. I had, right, I'm thinking about this, and right, I'm getting dopamine in my brain, and it's getting dopamine in the brain, and getting the energy in. Right, it was dopamine, and what I'm realizing is I'm going through a step-by-step process of having, oh, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to have do that, and then do this, and then do that. For example, when we're talking about the communication, do you see how we're talking about going to a person and having these 50 different data points and relate only speaking about if it relates to the person, therefore you're getting filtered already by that person because it's trying to recall data from its brain of how it relates to your situation, and that creates desire. That creates the, oh, talking to multiple people. If I talk to multiple people, then what's going to happen? I am filtering through many different data points, and I can actually get a lot of help. I can help my situation that much because I'm talking many people, filtering all this data. I have a plan. They can help me because I have this plan, and you have nothing yet. You haven't done anything, and you're getting your brain is getting this dopamine from anticipating, and from this anticipation, then let's say that's step one, talking to the people, and then it goes to step two in his brain. You haven't actually done this in real life yet, but then from the step one to talking to people, then step two, something else. Let's say building a business, even though no, that doesn't relate to this. Maybe it does. Forget that I said anything about that. Step one, talking to people. Step two, something else. And your brain is getting dopamine. Oh, I did step one, then I will do then doing step two, and then now it's even going to step three, without ever doing step one in real life. And what did we say about the information noise? Then it starts to gain noise in its brain, and then even lose the importance of knowing step one. And step one is the thing that unlocks everything. You were only able to discover step two because of step one. Please. This is biological. Okay, this is biological. This is not, this is all biological. You're only able to discover step two because of step one. You unlocked step two because of step one. And there's this, and this relates to what I said before of the recalling information, and that sometimes you don't have to write down every single anticipated state, or any, you don't have to write every single data point, right? Because there are some data points that are dependent on other data points, and when you go for this data point, it recalls data that unlocks these data points. Only because you've seen this data point, it unlocks everything. Because when you unlock this, then it unlocks number two, then number two unlocks number three unlocks number four, and you just knowing number one unlocks everything else easily. Instead of knowing, let's say, 10 data points, you only know one, and when you unlock one, then it unlocks the 10. It unlocks the two, then three, then four. That again, this is very important. It's used in everyday life. And what you take away from this is, I know I'm trying to recall what I was even talking about. the brain friends communication and the anticipated state. And okay, what take away from this is your brain is going to anticipate states and go to from step one, step two, step three, and have this planning mode and getting this dopamine rush. But what you need to do is focus on the step one. The step one, and you need to make it very clear. And the best thing to do is writing it down, because writing it down saves energy. Instead of having it running in your head when it's fresh, you write it down and then memorize it. Then you have it in memory, and you always have it down in a sheet which you can go to and have it recorded. Probably I should even do videos on actually doing this and showing how to do it. But I think it's very simple, right? I told you, write it down, and then repeat it, keep on saying it and keep on writing it down. Even create an exercise from this. You can tell AI, hey, create an exercise from this, and create different scenarios. You can even make it an exercise from this particular isomorphic principle. And it's important to say isomorphic principle because it will apply to any decision you make. And those are the ones that have one of the highest value. And as we were talking about step one, knowing the step one, and the step one unlocks the other steps. Therefore, memorizing and knowing the step one unlocks everything else. And remember, my brain is going to keep connecting with this, and it's going to keep on talking. Let me just say it quickly. Right, brain connecting with these data points, and what's important, decision making. If you write down your decisions, what's the decisions you want to do right now in your brain right now? Get a piece of paper, get a pencil, buy a pen, whatever it is. What are the decisions you want to make right now? Write them all down. Just write them down. And what you do is you keep reading this paper. Right now, get a piece of paper. What are the ideas, decisions in your head? I have to do this, Paper, write them down. Number one, number two, number three, number four, maybe you have 50. Whatever it is. What you're going to do? There's actually different ways what you can do, but I suggest the first one, which is the most simplest, is you keep reading this set of 50 papers. So 50 tasks you want to do. Read them. Just read them. Get them inside your memory. Read them. You set an alarm on your phone. Morning, middle of the day, at night. I would probably suggest you actually read it. You have a set an alarm 10 times for the first 3 days, because that will allow you to, hey, now I know this almost by heart. And what you're going to realize is once you've written down everything and you memorize them in your brain, now that's structure in your brain. And because that's structure in your brain, now your brain can recall more data to assign the value, more data from your brain that aligns with those tasks that you have. But I think before that, actually with that, at the same time, the hierarchy of those tasks. And then once you know them in memory, then your brain can start to optimize. Hey, actually this task is more important than that task, and this task is more important than that task. And what you can do is filter them and say, okay, I'm going to only pick 10 from these, and which one are the most important. And then after those 10, okay, I'm going to pick 3, which is the one that's most important. And after that, which is the one most important task, and you go do that one. And guess what? That's already evidence in your brain. Remember when we talked about calculated difference? That's already calculated difference and evidence for your brain. Hey, I filtered through 50 different tasks, and one of them came out to be the most important. That's already evidence in your brain to probably go make that decision right now, and you're not even going to be hesitant. If someone can come and question you, and your brain wouldn't even process anything that's questioning you because you have so much evidence. You made it so concrete, so vivid in your brain that it's as if you've already done it, but you know you haven't done it, and you're going to go do it right now because it's very, very important for you to do it. And you gain a lot of evidence on doing it, and that you can apply it to every decision. And you see how I'm saying decision? You wrote down the data to make a decision. That's very important because decisions are what create everything. I'm talking in this video, but I'm talking in this video only because it can create a decision. Right? It can create a decision for someone. It is being spoken to be able to create a decision, action. And the only reason there's the only reason data decision, the only reason there's anything written down is for you to make a decision. Right? Any video you watch is for a decision, any text that's written is for a decision. Anything that's being built, hey, your computer, hey, your desk, hey, your for creating paint, maybe it was in the beginning. It was written down. It was written down or repeated multiple times in the brain to be able to create that. It was written to be able to have energy saved, because once you write it down, then your brain can evaluate, okay, I'm seeing it right now, what other things can I do in that state? And then you can simulate the scenario, that state to this state. And this is very common knowledge for engineers, for example. It is very common knowledge for engineers, anyone that goes to engineering school. Maybe this principle is not clearly verbalized and said, or maybe it's so obvious that it's just not talked about because it's so obvious. Probably is. But when you have no data to know this, then this is one of the things that you need to put in memory. And you repeat it. And when usually there's this, I don't watch YouTube videos, but when I used to watch YouTube videos, it was about and when I say I don't watch YouTube videos, I mean I don't watch any entertainment. Example, when I watch YouTube videos, I watch a YouTube video and take notes of the YouTube video. But actually take notes. Not every YouTube video I take notes, because some videos I do them for action and then save them in my library to take the action. See, that's something I'm working on as well. And what I'm talking about is the jaw. This one right here. For example, I seen a podcast for the jaw, and that relates. He was doing MSCs, and in the MSCs, he explained his experience, and his name was Dr. Lipkin. And that creates decision, because I can email that practitioner, or when I go to America, Now it's just as part of my evaluation. It's part of my evaluation for action. Because when you compare, let's say when I used to watch YouTube for entertainment, it's simply as simple as that, entertainment, right? That was about 2 years ago. Now I will never watch entertainment in my life because there's zero, not never watch entertainment in my life. I'm never going to watch entertainment ever. Never. I'm never going to watch entertainment because it has no value. How can I watch entertainment when, example, there's a current problem going on, example, with this? There's no cognitive energy to spend on watching entertainment. I would rather sleep. I don't listen to music as well because that's entertainment, the same thing. How can I have cognitive energy to listen to music? I haven't listened to music in so long. Actually, it's only been, actually, it's not been that long. It's only been, actually, we're on May, and I stopped around April 2025. Okay, that's about a year and 1 month. It hasn't. And do I get any, what are those called? Music worms, music ears? Right, you listen to music in your head? Rarely. Rarely. I rarely get that. That's very good because now your brain is thinking about the things that actually make the decision. Because remember, text, videos, they're all written, they're all set to create action, to do action. Example, like good example of this, when you're at a dentist or anything, they're doing mechanical work with their hands. They know all the theory in their head, but that theory is not creating the action with their hand. Do you understand that? Yes, they have, when it comes to a certain complication, they can do something, or they can, usually they're just using tools that already exist, and they know how to read scans from the tools, example from CBCT scans, and know how to diagnose and what to do, and know about the different nerves and everything, and know about the injections, and be able to numb the patient and not cause any permanent damage. This is, do you need to know all that theory to do that? Probably not, right? Same with the computer. What do you do with the computer? Let's say you're uploading an online business, where really all you're doing is clicking on a keyboard and the mouse. That's all you're doing. What do you need? Knowledge to be able to know how to speak proper English and communicate effectively. Maybe. Do you need to know neuroscience to be able to do that, and psychology? Maybe that helps because that could create more boundaries in your brain to know what decision to pick from. Do you see how all of these components I mentioned, the principles, are connecting to each other and actually narrowing down our theories, we can say, or hypotheses? Just because, and you can call them first principles, just because we get these first principles. I think, I'm going to end it here. It's been 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 40 seconds. Okay, I'm ending it here, and What will I do in next videos? First, I had to improve my communication, and moving back and forth. It's a bit fidgety, and it's because it's an number one unstructured video. I'm speaking from my brain, and probably need to start including Google Documents, text form, and even creating exercises and examples of how these can apply in real life, because this not only helps someone watching, but this helps me. Like, creating this helps me as well, because these are principles that are the principles I use in my brain, and even to be able to make them better or even remove if some of them. And remember, I only know what I know based on the data in my brain, and I might be wrong. So you need to always, even if you're 100% certain you're not wrong, you must always have the data point in your brain that you still might be wrong. Because the only reason you think you're not wrong is because of the data you have in your brain that says you're not wrong. You see how it works? You might be completely wrong, even though you feel completely certain that you're not wrong. And that's one of the most important lessons you can take from this whole video. Because that allows you to be open-minded, and being open-minded, that's what allows growth. And if you can keep growing, then you have no limits.